Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we are continuing with our weekly series of Shirim on the Zohar HaKadosh, where we attempt to draw the Chachma of Moshe Rabbeinu into the Bina of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, to draw from the illumination and the unity of Moshe Rabbeinu into the separation and the intensity of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, which is ultimately all that we've been talking about in the Zohar HaKadosh over this past year, and Be'ezras Hashem, what we'll continue speaking about until the next Darga. But the Avodah is to go down from Chachma into the territory of Bina. But again, it's not to tarry and wait alone in Bina without the illumination of Chachma, but rather to schlep the Chachma down through the Bina so that once the Chachma goes through the vessels of Bina itself, it can ascend back upwards into its original source and go even higher than the point of its origination, to the degree that we go down from Chachma into Bina and then back up from Bina into Chachma, but now we're no longer going back up to the original light of Chachma, we're going into the inner interiority of Chachma, which brings us back to a place of Keser, back to a place of Reshad Lois Yada. Moshe Rabbeinu is the light of Shabbos Kodesh. Shabbos Kodesh, as we're going to see, is the light of Chachma. It's the light of unity. It's where we're drawing down awareness of the indivisible unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light. The infinite light is revealed. The weekdays, the days of death, the days of concealment, the days of separation, the days of hatred, the descent down into the 6 days of the week, that's the territory of Bina. That's the territory of splinteredness. That's the territory of Shviras HaKelim. Now, everything that we're going to be talking about is very much connected to what we saw last night from Rabbi Nachman's Zchus Yogan Aleinu in Torah Pei Gimel, in Tinyana, which is the need to transition from Chol back into Shabbos, from slavery back into Cherus, from the pain of the body into the redemption of the body. And we're going to see how the Zohar HaKadosh brings out an additional element that is nested within the Torah of Rabbi Nachman. And everything that we're going to be talking about is built on the Heilige Zidichaver, the Teres Tzvi, on Daf Reish Hey in Parshas Vayakel, as well as the Zohar Chai. And we're going to see how these two Torahs are going to be connected. That the process from Chachma and Moshe Rabbeinu down into Bina and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is very much like the descent away from unity into separation, and then the return from separation back into unity. The only difference is that we experience life through time. What the Zohar Kodesh is going to show us is this very idea that we saw in Rabbi Nachman, but across the process of time. The human being lives with two frameworks of looking at time. Time is not some incidental thing that the human finds themselves in, but rather time and the nature of the days that we find ourselves in are the vessel. It's the levush, it's the garment that expresses the innermost point of my neshama. Midas yamai, the measure of my days. Each and every person is the sum total of their days, and the sum total of their days is the person themselves. This is the secret of Avraham Zakein Babi Yamim. We live with a perception of time where time is not simply the experience that we have, but it is the frame through which we engage with experience. That being said, there's two modalities of time. There is redeemed time and there is broken time. Broken time is the 6 days of the week. Broken time is the Yom in the Chol. It's looking at the world through eyes of separation, looking at the world through eyes of concealment, looking at the world through eyes of dysregulation. And then there's going to be the Yemei Shabbos, the days of unity, where the person is able to look at their life through a lens of unity and seeing a perspective of having everything that I need exactly where I find myself. In the Chachma of Moshe Rabbeinu, there's no need to go outwards. It's Shabbos hi melitzok. I don't have to go out searching for Yeshua outside of myself. Shabbos is the Yeshua, which is why perhaps Shabbos hi melitzok is Rosh Tevas Moshe. That's the secret of the Mayim of Moshe Rabbeinu. He doesn't need to do anything. He doesn't need to express himself. He doesn't need to share his words. He's already illuminated internally. But the secret is that we have to schlep Moshe Rabbeinu down into the territory of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, take the light of Shabbos and bring it down into the 6 days of the week, so that then in the splinter nature of the 6 days of the week, we can recuperate that lost sense of Shabbos. But now, when we recuperate the lost sense of unity that Shabbos provided within the territory of disunity and Bina and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, then when we return back to the light of Shabbos, we're not just going back to Shabbos, but now we know that Shabbos contains within itself the 6 days of the week as well. And that's what we're going to see in this chelik of the Zohar HaKadosh, that we have to transition out of the 6 days of the week. We have to transition out of the difficulty of the chol. But the transition out of the difficulty of the whole is not just to run back into Shabbos, but rather to draw all of the whole into Shabbos itself. And so now, for our purposes, we're going to see the framework in which the Zohar HaKadosh is going to be describing to us the process in which Shabbos expresses itself. First and foremost, we start with Chachma, almost as if to say there was a light of unity, there was a light of Shabbos, there was a light of indivisibility that existed prior to any possibility of separation. That's the Shabbos that was Koidim the Olam. That's the Shabbos of Bereshis. That the Metzias of the Welt is Shabbos. It is Chachma. Koyach Ma. Bereshis B'chuchmasa. It's created in one fell swoop of unity, and in that place it's Shabbos. That's the secret of Moshe Rabbeinu. And then that unity is shattered. It's broken up. There's a Shviras HaKelim, and that original light goes down, and it populates the worlds of separation with these shards of holiness, these post-traumatic fragments, which we must transform into fractalized expressions of infinitude. But prior to that revelation, we find ourselves in the post-traumatic kind of wasteland of the worlds of Bri, Yitzir, and Asiya, where there's concealment of the mind, concealment of the soul, and concealment of the body. And our job is to descend down into the territory of Chol with the particular unique mission of being Nishmas Yisrael, to clarify the residual lights of holiness that rest trapped within and as the very shards of holiness that populate the worlds of separation. And when we're Mavara Birurim, and we can elevate a nitzutz, what we do is we find the light of spirituality, the light of Malchusa, the Kadisha, the light of the Nakudas HaYesod and the Iker within each and everything, the Nakuda Tova of it. We uncover that from within the concealment. We're Mezachich, the Rapach Birurim. We elevate ourselves out of the Shvira. We bring that as a Mayan Nukvin, as an awakening from below, from within concealment itself, back up to Zer Anpin and Malchus of Atzilus, so to speak. And we awaken within that a chain reaction from below, back above, all the way, all the way, all the way back up to the infinite light that preceded the very possibility of a tzimtzum, from whence we draw down the new possibility of novelty, and it comes down through the very shape in which it went back up, unifying all of the new partsufim that are being formed, Atik v'nuk, Arich v'nuk, Abba v'ima, Yisrael Saba and Tvuna, Zer Anpin v'nuk, until there's a new hitznotzis, it's a new gilui of das, a new hakara of the infinite light in this world, which is the hiskalis of Shabbos, which is the redemption of the mind, the redemption of the body, the redemption of the heart, which brings about the ultimate redemption itself. That is the tachlis of the human being, to descend down from Shabbos into the 6 days of Chol, and then to go from the 6 days of Chol back into Shabbos to illuminate Shabbos in its root. So what we're going to see now in the Zohar HaKadosh is as follows: that there are days of Shabbos, and then there's days of the Chol. What happens during the days of the Chol? In the days of the Chol, what we're doing is we're leaving Chachma. When a person leaves Chachma, they immediately go into Bina, which is the source of separation. That's where there's Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, the three-sided nature of self, the need to unify all three parts to the secret of the Shmira Sabris, of unifying all the parts that come from Bina. Bina is ultimately immediately reflective in the separation that emerges as Zer Anpin. We know that the Ima, Bina, is the source of the Midos of the Ben of Zer Anpin. So when we're dealing with Bina, when we're dealing with the 6 days of the week, we're dealing with Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. We're dealing with each day representing its own unique principle of spiritual experience, and each of them seeming separate from the other one. The first day of the week represents Chesed, the second day is Gvura, the third day is Tiferes, then Netzach and Hod. Suddenly we find ourselves split up and all tumbled around in all of this disunity of the different colors that are separate in their essence. And then our job in that 6 days of the week is to enter into Erev Shabbos, and Erev Shabbos is the secret of the Yesod. Erev Shabbos is the unification of the disparity, but it's prior to the undoing of disparity itself. Yesod is the culmination prior to the actual culmination. It's Ki Kol Bashamayim Uva'aretz. It has the ability of unifying together disparate entities, but it still allows them to operate in their difference. Erev Shabbos is the Nakuda of the Yesod, which is where we collect all of the days of the week. We collect all of the kolchos that Zer Anpin sends down, all of the midos hakadoshim that were hidden within the 6 days of the week, and we allow them to coalesce into the singular pointed expression of Yesod, which then expresses itself in a chibur to Malchus, and that's Shabbos. And so the first level of Shabbos is going to be the 6 days of the week, which is Zer Anpin, which is the brokenness of Bina and separation. And then on Erev Shabbos, we unify all of that brokenness within the element of Yesod. We find that Nakuda Pnimius of it all, and we prepare ourselves to reveal it in Malchus, which is Shabbos. So that's the purpose of the 6 days of the week, the clarification of the six midos, and then from that clarification of the six midos to uncover the lower element of the Nekuda Pnimis, which is Shabbos, which will then have the shin of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, of Zer Anpin that descends down from Bina into the world of separation, and then we'll have the Bas Yechida, the Bas Ayin of Malchus, and we'll have the shin Bas. So that's going to be very similar to what we saw last night from Rabbi Nachman and Torah Pei Gimel. But what the Zohar Kodesh is going to add as follows is that, okay, fine. So we see that the entire process of descending down into the hole, leaving Chachma, going into Bina, which then splinters up into the three kavin of Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod Yisoid, the birurim that I have to engage in on the level of Vak, on the level of the Midos, on the level of encountering this worldly experience, and then coming to that place of Erev Shabbos, which is almost like the Shabbos within the week, which is the Midah of Kol, and collecting all of the potency of those 6 days of the week and drawing it down into this potent expression of the week that which is then prepared to meet Malchus, which is Shabbos, and that's going to be the yichud of the Shin and the Bas Ayin. But the Zohar Kadosh then says, but we also know that Bina itself is referred to as Shabbos, which means that Bina is just like Malchus in the fact that it's also a bas to something beyond it. The reason Malchus on the lowest level is referred to as Shabbos is because it receives from Chesed, Gvur, and Tiferes, from those Shlosha Kavin, which is the Shin Bas. And we said, okay, so Shabbos, Malchus is the Bas because it contains everything together and it shows a unity of things. And then we see how all disparity is really unified. But that makes sense if we're calling Malchus the Bas, the daughter, because it's receiving from Zer Anpin, which ascends above it. But we know that Bina is referred to as Shabbos HaGadol, which means that Bina, in relationship to that which is higher than it, is also going to be like Malchus, which is like the Bas. So says the Zohar Kadosh, I understand why Malchus is being called the Bas, which is why we have Shin, Bas, Shabbos. But why is Bina also called Shabbos? What is she a Bas to? And that's where the Zohar Kadosh is going to hint the secondary revelation, that what we do is we go down from Chachma into Bina, into the Midos of Zer Anpin, then we create the unity with Zer Anpin and Malchus, but then that's not the final frontier. Then Malchus goes back all the way up into Bina, where Bina then goes all the way back up into Chachma to reveal that Bina is receiving from Chachma all along, to reveal that Bina is also the secret of Shabbos, which is revealing the Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius Atik. And so what the Zohar Kadosh is revealing to us is the simple process that we've been explaining over and over in exceedingly complicated ways, which Be'ezras Hashem will continue to refine, abstract, until the Lashon is as clear as the content that we're trying to convey, Be'ezras Hashem. But what we're saying is as follows. First off, there's the lower level of Shabbos. There's Chachma prior to any differentiation. Then we descend down into Bina, into the days of Chol, into separation, into concealment. And in that place, we have to work through all of the disparity, all of the separation to allow it to unify and coalesce itself within the lower Malchus, which is the secret of the Bas. And that's where we're going to have Shabbos Malchusa. But that's not enough. We don't just go down from Chachma into Bina in order to show how all the separation of Bina is also unified in Chachma, because what's the point? The purpose is ultimately to go back even higher, to have more and more aliyos, to reveal that even the beginning, which we thought was the highest level that we can ever imagine, is just a dream in comparison to what we can actually experience. And then when we take Malchus and that unity of Shabbos on the lower level, back up into Bina, what we do is then we reveal that Bina itself is not the highest point, but rather that Bina allows us to go into Chachma, and then from there into Pnimius of Chachma, which is Pnimius of Atik, where we realize that there's always a hashpa'ah of Keser that's being miskala through Chachma down into Bina, and then Bina allows for the process from Zer Anpin down to Malchus, but then Malchus goes all the way back up into Bina to be Megala, that it's specifically through Bina that we can come to the Pnimius of Chachma, to the Pnimius of Atik, which is the secret of the unification of Shabbos and Chol, the realization that Chol is really only there to be Magdil, the light of Shabbos, but never to return back to a place of Shabbos where I think that Shabbos is all that exists, but rather to come to a place of Shabbos where I can then go into the next Yom Harishon, which is even higher than Shabbos, because now I understand the tachlis of descending down into the pratium of Bina, into the world of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, into that territory of Chol, is so that I can bring Chol all the way back into Shabbos, into the inner interiority of Shabbos, to reveal that Chol and Shabbos are ultimately unified from the perspective of Keser, Be'ezras Hashem. And so with that Hakdama, which is fundamentally based on the Zohar Chai and the Ateres Tzvi from Zidichav, we're going to read the Heilige words of the Zohar HaKadosh. Parshas Vayakel Daf Reish Daled. The Heilige Zohar says as follows. Kad ayil shabta itztarach inun amma kadisha la'achsa gamayhu me shimusha dechol. When Shabbos arrives, when the holiness of Shabbos arrives, when it's time to ascend back into Chachma, The Jewish people, the holiness of the Jewish people is awoken, and there is a commitment to cleanse ourselves from the engagement with chol. We have to wash ourselves. We have to wash that body of avdus, like we saw from Rabbi Nachman, and prepare ourselves for moichin of cheres. My taima, what's the reason that we have to cleanse ourselves and prepare to take ourselves off in order to put ourselves back on again? Begin de bechol rucha achra azla v'shatya v'shara al ama. The reason is that during the week of the chol, during the 6 days of the week, which are the midos that come from bina, that place of separation, the self is mislabesh in a different form of a ruach. It's that ruach that's susceptible to concealment of the six-sidedness of things, of the up, down, right, left, above and below, where there's right, wrong, etc., etc. And I find myself shut and sharia in that place. I find myself floating in that place. The kadbai barnash lenafkem and hahurucha ula ayel berucha achra kadisha. And when the human being, when the neshama wants to extricate itself and untether itself from that ruach, from that guf of the 6 days of the week, and to ascend up into the place of kedusha, back into the place of chachma, there is a need for preparation. I have to prepare myself to receive that holy inspiration of Chachma, which means cleansing the Guf Hatzara as cleansing the Bina. So we're leaving Bina and we're going back up in Chachma. Tachazi, come and see. Raze ilo demila kol inun shis yoimin. Is achten beraza dechad nekuda kadisha, the kula human is achten bei. So now the Zohar Kadosh is talking about the first level of Shabbos, that we leave Chachma and we go into Bina, which is the 6 days of the week. But the secret is that within the 6 days of the week, the is achten beraza, the chad nekuda kadisha, the kula human is achten bei. Within that Shabbos of the 6 days of the week, and Malchus, when we come down to the Midah of Yesod, which is going to be the beginning of the Hiskashrus with Malchus, so we see that all of the 6 days are in truth connected and contained within that singular point. And so we see that we leave Chachma into Bina to show how all of the separation is also part of the unity. The is human achrinin, the kaimin labar mesitra achra. Not only that, but when we're dealing with the descent into separation, when we're dealing with the process of the 6 days of the week, where Bina gives birth to the midos, and the midos then descend down to try and protect and elevate the Shechina, which finds herself dressed in the garments of concealment of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya, and the descent downwards of Zer Anpin, that ensures that, you know what, some of the lights that are going to be descending down are going to get caught up in the Sitra Achra. That's going to be the Tchum of Shabbos. When we're dealing with Bina, Zer Anpin, and Malchus, and unifying the disparity of those 6 days of the week, we do run into real difficulty where in the worlds of separation, there is concealment that a person can get stuck in. Ve'is human achrinin de kaimen lago me igula kadisha ve'is achtun benekuda kadisha. But in spite of the fact that as a result of the descent down into the worlds of separation and Bina, during the 6 days of the week, there are going to be certain elements that cannot be elevated in a revealed way. Nevertheless, there are the 6 higher days, which are the midos of Zer Anpin, which descend down into the worlds of separation, as the Hiliga Kamarna teaches us, to ensure that the Shechina Kadisha can maintain her presence of mind, so to speak, throughout the exilic process of the week. And that Hashpa'a Lamata is what ensures that there's a goodness to be found in all 6 days of the week, and that unity is going to bring about Shabbos. That's the lower level of Shabbos that we've been talking about. And all of that disparity of the week is going to be shown to be part and parcel of a unified whole, that singular nekuda of Yesod, which can be miskasher to Malchus. V'Yisrael kadishin v'chol inan de misaskin bekedusha kol yuma de shabsa is achten kol inan shesyumen de lego de is achten b'hahi nekuda is achten b'hai begin lenatraloin. So the Zohar Kadosh says as follows: when we're still operating in that lower level of Shabbos, where we descend down from Chachma and go into Bina, so that the Midos can then operate in their disunity and be unified in the place of Malchus, which is the secret of Shabbos. So that level is the secret of all those who sanctify the Shabbos and who are engaged in the process of unifying all of the previous disparity. On the day of Shabbos, they can gather together all of those 6 days of the week that they experienced previously, all of those 6 days of separation, and they can show how all of them are unified together in the singular point, and there's going to be the protection of those 6 points in Shabbos, which is going to be the secret of the 6 days of the week unifying with Shabbos. B'chol inan shis human, and all of these 6 days, the Shabda, hahi nekuda tmira ihi kivun da ayel Shabda kedein salka hahi nekida ve'is ateres ve'is achta la'ela v'kula tamirin begave. What happens is that as a result of going down from Bina, we go into Zer Anpin, and the six midos of Zer Anpin are now going to be unified within Malchus. And that Nikud of Malchus on Shabbos has an aliyah, and it's revealed to show how there's a unity amongst all of the separation. That's the first secret of Shabbos. We descend down from Chachma into Bina, which is the 6 days of the week, in order so that we can then bring all of the 6 days of the week into Shabbos and show how it's unified. But that's still not bringing us to the second level of Shabbos, which is going to be the Kesser of it all. Tachazi, come and see, says the Zohar Kadosh. Is Yamim v'is Yamim. There are two types of days. There are two perspectives in this world. There's the perspective of Shabbos and there's the perspective of Chol, the perspective of Chachma and the perspective of Bina. There are Yemei HaChol Kama de Itmar. There are the 6 days of separation, like we just spoke about, that emerge from Bina, which can be unified in Malchus to show how really disparity is also unified, but it doesn't give us that added boost of infinitude itself, which we're going to discuss now. They're the 6 days of the week. V'ilan Kaimin Labar, La'amin. Those 6 days, they're relatable to the rest of the world as well. That's the time space that all of existence operates in. That's not unique to Nishmas Yisrael. And there's also going to be Yemei Shabbos, the days of Shabbos, the Inin Yemei HaShavua, Kaiman Yisrael. The days of Shabbos, the perspective of Shabbos is something that's unique for Nishmas Yisrael, that perspective of Chachma. V'kad salka hainekuda kula itganiz v'i salka. And when this point of Malchus, which now unifies all of the 6 days of the week of the Yesod, and that Shmiras Habris that gives birth to that unity of that lower level of Shabbos, when that Nekuda goes up. So it's not just there to reveal itself as a Nekuda that holds all things together, but rather it goes all the way down into Malchus, so that Malchus can then go up afterwards to prove something that was not proven before, as we've spoken about. So Tachazi, Isyamin ve'Isyamin, Yesh Yemei Chol, Kamad Itmar, there are days of mundanity, like we said, V'ilan Kaimin Labar La'amin, those are relegated to the rest of the world. And then there's the days of Shabbos as well. And the days of Shabbos are the secret of Nishmas Yisrael. And when all of the days are unified within that lower point of Shabbos, and they're unified within that singular Nakuda of Malchus, and all of them are contained within there, V'ihi Salka, and she begins to ascend. So now it's not just that Chachma goes down to Malchus, but rather Malchus is now going to ascend back into Chachma to be Megala Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius Atik. V'ihi Salka, Malchus begins to go up. V'kivan Di'ihi Salka, Ikra Shabbos, when Malchus unifies all 6 days of the week, it's going to be the secret of Shabbos. Mahu Shabbos. Why is it referred to as Shabbos? Itema begins Shvisa Dechsiv Kiboy Shabbos Yeyusu. If you're going to tell me it's because there's no need to engage in action and there's a Shvisa, so fine, that's appropriate. Aval Raza Demila, but what's the secret of the word Shabbos? Kivan de Salka, Hanikida Vinihira Nahir Kadein Misatra Ihu Ba'avin, Kivan de Misatra Ihu Ba'avin Kadein Ischaberes Ve'ischadis Bahu Lemehevechad. The secret of Shabbos and Pnimius is that we have the Avos, we have Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, and Yisod, the 6 days of the week. They descend down into Malchus by David Malka Mashiach. They unify themselves together. That Nikud of Malchus goes back up, and it shows the unity of all of the separation, and that's when it's going to be called Shabbos. Shabbos, like we said, is the Shin, is Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov of Zer Anpin that descends from Bina to be Mischaber with the Bas, which is Malchus. Shin ha-ukma. We taught what Shin is. Shin is Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. It's the 6 days of the week. It's a secret of the 6 days of the week that descends from Bina, and they go into the separation, and then they're unified in Malchus, and Malchus is going to be Shabbos. And Malchus is now going to ascend and connect to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and it's going to be the secret of Shabbos, which is going to bring us into the world of Alma Da'asi. So here we have the secret that the Zohar Kadosh is saying, that we descend down from Chachma into Bina to reveal the 6 days of the week and then unify them all in Shabbos, which is the secret of Malchus. But the purpose of Malchus is then to ascend back up and to be unified with Zer Anpin, and then go even further back into Bina, back into Alma Da'asi, because once it goes back into Bina, then we can schlep all of the separation back into Chachma, but not only to the original level of Chachma, but rather Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius Atik, which reveals the unity of separation and unity. V'kula ihu chad, v'da ihu shin bas. This lower level of Shabbos is now unified. There's the Shin, there's the Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, there's the Zer Anpin that descends from Bina, and it's going to unify with Malchus, and it's Kulo Chad. Now the Zohar Kadosh brings us to the next level. V'i tema Shabbos Agadol, v'ihu le'ela amay ikra Shabbos. But now if you want to tell me that the reason Malchus is referred to as Shabbos is because Malchus receives from Zer Anpin and it unifies all of the separation. So then why is Bina going to be referred to as Shabbos? Bina is the source of Zer Anpin. Bina is the source of unity prior to separation. So how can we say that there's going to be a unity between higher levels of the Shin and the lower level of the Bas, and that Bina is going to be the Bas? I understand that Malchus is the Bas because it's receiving from something higher than it, from Zer Anpin. Zer Anpin comes from Bina, but to call Bina the Bas now, where is Bina receiving from? And this is the secret of once we go down from Bina to Zer Anpin to Malchus, then we have to go all the way back up. We take Malchus and we schlep it back into Bina to reveal that Bina itself is not the starting point, but rather that Bina is receiving something from Chachma. And what is Bina receiving from Chachma? Bina is receiving the Pnimius of Chachma. And what's the Pnimius of Chachma? That's the Pnimius of Atik. So once we go down from Bina into the 6 days of the week to be Mischaber in Shabbos itself, then we take that Shabbos, that Nakuda of the Bas, and we bring it all the way back up to be Mitchaber with Zer Anpin. So it's Eishas Chayla Teres Baila. Then that goes back into Alma Da'asi. That goes back into Bina, revealing that Bina itself is not just Shabbos in terms of the highest level, but it's in truth the Bas, it's the Malchus, Be'erich, that which is higher than it. But what's higher than Bina that would convey that Bina is just receiving a light from above it? That's the secret of Chachma. And what's Chachma giving over? It's giving over Pnimius Chachma, which is Pnimius of Atik. And that's what the Zohar HaKadosh is going to be revealing here. Oy, V'itema Shabbos Agadol, V'ihu La'ela. So why is Bina going to be referred to as Shabbos? What's above it? Amma Ikre Shabbos, Elavadai Hachihu. This is going to be the secret. V'raza Demila, D'chol Eser Nekuda Di'ihu Ikra D'chol Eina Ikra Bas. Keda Amart Shamreni Ki Ishon Bas Ayin, Begin Di'ihu Nekuda Ikra D'chol Eina Ikra Bas, Alma Da'asi, Yuhe Chala Lahahi Nekuda Ilah. So what the Zohar Kadosh says is as follows. When we refer to Shabbos as a bas, Malchus as the bas that's receiving the Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov of Zer Anpin, we're not saying that it's the bas because it's tiny and infinitesimal in the element of Malchus, which would lead us to question why Bina could be referred to as a bas. Because really, the Nekuda HaPnimis represents the fundamental way in which we draw down the light that is higher. Malchus, the Nukud of the Basi, Ubakol Shema, the secret that Avram Avinu had a Bas, that Bas is the secret of Malchus, where everything is being revealed. And whatever level is revealing a level higher than it is going to be referred to as Malchus. So yes, Malchus with relationship to Zer Anpin is going to be that lower Nakuda that's receiving that which comes from above it to the degree that it can be considered a feminine counterpart in a Bas. But we can also apply that same erech to Bina, and even though we know that Bina is the Heliga Urus of Bina that we have no hasaga on, that we have no capability of grasping, so how can we say that Bina is also going to be referred to as the Bas? When we understand that the Bas, that Malchus, is simply just the reflection of an inner process externalizing itself, so then any level that reveals a level higher than it is going to have the same quality of Malchus, and it's going to be able to be referred to as a Bas, which is going to be the secret of Bina, which is the Malchus of Chachma. That's the secret of Tfuna. It's the secret of Bina also serving to reveal the inner expression of Chachma, which is Pnimius Chachma. So we see that when we schlep Malchus all the way back up into Bina, we reveal that Bina itself is going to be considered as the feminine counterpart to the light that's higher than it, which is the Pnimius of Chachma. And then we're going to also be able to say that it can be referred to as Shin Bas. Amai Ikre Shabbos, Elavade Hachihu, Veraz Demila B'chol Eser Nekuda Di'ihu Ikra D'chol Eina Ikra Bas. Anytime we encounter the singular most point, which represents the foundational aspect of something, it represents the Bas. It's the Bas Ayin, Keda Amart Shamreni Ki Ishon Bas Ayin, that there needs to be a protection on that innermost point, begin Di'ihu Nekuda Ikra D'chol Eina, because it's the innermost point of the entire thing. It's referred to as the Bas. And Alma Da'asi, the world of Bina, which now we're surprisingly referring to as a Bas as well, Ihu Heichal Lahahi Nekuda Ilah. What Bina represents is the Heichal, the Malchus for the Nekuda Ilah, which is Chachma itself, which is the Avos that are Nichla within Chachma itself. It's the Sharish of the Midos of Chachma themselves, the Pnimius of Chachma, as the Zohar Chai points out, that is now being Maskala within Bina, which is the secret of Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius Atik. The Kadihi Kaima Venatla Begad Faihu La'avin La'et Atra La'ela Ikre Kula Shabbos. And so too, the same relationship, when Bina begins to become the receptacle that can reveal the inner interiority of Chachma, the inner interiority of Chachma, the Chesed Gvur and the Faris of Chachma, which is Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius Atik, so then Bina is also going to be referred to as the Bas. V'kad avhon misatrin la'ela b'goy nekuda ilah ikre Shabbos. And then when Bina and Chachma unify, it's also going to be referred to as Shabbos. Nekuda Tata. Kad mitatra ba'avin ikre Shabbos. Hai nekuda Tata kad salka ve'itchazit ve'itkashit. Kedein kol chedva ishtachich le'ela ve'tata ve'almin kula b'chedva. When we come to bring all of the separation of Malchus back to Zah and of Bina back into Chachma, and we come to understand that Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius Atik, and that all separation is simply there to reveal the secret of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's absolute infinitude in the light of the Shabbos and the light of doing tshuva on tshuva. Kedein kol chedva ishtachich le'ela. There is joy above and below. La'almin, l'kula b'chedva. Everything is in a joyous laughter, a rapturous unity that reveals above and below to be unified. B'hai laila, hai nekuda is pashet nuhure, uparish gadfe al alma, v'chol shutune achrin misabrin v'netiru ishtachech al alma. Ukeden etoisef ruchan nishmasa b'Yisrael al kol chad v'chad. And when this unification takes place, when all separation is revealed to be part and parcel of unity, and Bina is unified again with Chachma to reveal the lights of Keser, just as Malchus is unified with Zah to reveal the lights of Bina, then Bina expresses herself, Kavyachol. The Chachma and the Chasadim and the Gvurus of Bina extend themselves outwards to protect the light of Zer'anpin, to protect the light of Chachma itself, and the entirety of existence is protected. It's that secret of Al Kol Psha'im Techaseh Ahava, that the entire world is protected and guarded by the loving wings, so to speak, of the Ahava and Yira, the Gadfin of Bina, that secret light that the Shechina Kadisha extends over Klal Yisrael to protect us, and the entire world is found in safety. And in that point, Nishmas Yisrael is engarbed with an additional strength, and Neshama Yisera comes back down, an additional piece of separation that can now be engaged with in a secret of more and more unity. Each and every person receives it in accordance with their own level. Ubahahi nishmasa Yisera, and with this Neshama Yisera, nashin kol atzva v'chemasa, all sadness and all anger go away. The gufat sara'as goes away. All that is found above and below in the yichud of Chachma and Bina of Zer'anpin and Malchus is joyous unity. At that moment, this ruach that comes down from above and it awakens us down here below, and there's an additional light that comes out from below to above. The world is filled with a besamim. The Heilige Rebbe of Melech said he couldn't handle himself as a result of the smells, the good smells of Erev Shabbos, the smells of Gan Eden, the Ginsa de Eden, V'nachas de Shara Alama Kadisha. What is this spirit? The spirit that awakens the concealment. That at that point, the spirit that draws forth from Gan Eden, it descends downwards and it rests upon all of the separation, all of the six midos, the kadmati leginsa the Eden, and we find ourselves in a place of Gan Eden. Kedein kol inen ruchen v'nishmasen the ginsa the Eden kulen misarin lahahu rucha, and everything is awoken to try and connect itself to that innermost ruach, that light of Keser, that light of Radla that combines Chachma and Bina together. Kruzei kai, there's a voice that calls out, va'amar zachin asin Yisrael amma kadisha dir'usa de marechon isar lagabeche. Praiseworthy are you, Nishmas Yisrael, for the desire and the love of your Creator is awoken for you. Raza de razin liyadei chachmasa. It's the secret of secrets, which is the light of Keser, specifically for those who are yadei chachmasa. When we understand that the Bina goes into Chachma, which is the secret of yadei chachmasa, of Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius Atik, then we have the Hasaga of razin de razin, which is the light of Keser. Ukedei v'zachan inun kad hayrucha isar. Praiseworthy are those when that spirit moves. Hayrucha iu is pashtusa the haynekida. What this ruach is that nekuda that went all the way up from Malchus back into Zah, back into Bina, then transforming Bina into Malchus itself. Berech the Pnimius of Chachma, which reveals the light of Reshid Loos Yada, which is the Pnimius of Chachma, Pnimius Atik, and it expresses itself in that singular most nekuda of that Bas Ayin, that Yechida Shebenefesh. It descends back down again, and it needs to be guarded. V'nafka mine, that ruach expresses itself downwards, and it extends across the world, and that's the secret of Shabbos. That's the secret of Shmira Shabbos. And then the Zohar Kadosh goes into the Sudos of Shabbos, which we're not going to go into. One other Nakuda that I want to read from this Zohar Kadosh, which is a few pages later, on Daf Reish Yud Amud Beis, but this lashon that the Zohar Kadosh is that ultimately when we draw the light of unity down into separation, what we're doing is we're being mamshech the nakuda into a ruach. We're extending that singular point of connectivity, and we're allowing it to be asi ruach miruach, that breath emerges from breath, and that the unity can be extended. But what is this unity? What is this ruach? This ruach is the secret of not grasping it yet, of not grasping Gan Eden. It's ayin le'ra'asa Elokim zulasecha nahar yotzei Eden. The light that comes out of Chachma is ultimately the light of Eden, which is Nikra Eden al Shem Adayin, that it is not yet revealed. Meaning to say that this ruach that we're trying to awaken ourselves to is not so much what we can actualize, but it's in addition to what is actualized, it's the yearning. And this is the levush of Shabbos. The Zohar Kadosh is discussing the nature in which the levush of Shabbos is built, and there's going to be the levush that's built out of our good actions and our participation in this world, and those things that we can actualize and those things that we can do. And there's also going to be the element of the levush which ascends from the innermost desire which can't be actualized. The kad salka nishmasa bahahu pitcha derakia. When the neshama ascends into that opening in the rakia and that light of Shabbos, le'ela is damin le levushin achrinan. There's new levushin that can yakirin iloyan diinun miruusa. There's a new garment that comes from what? From the ruach, which is the desire and the kavana of the heart, be'oraisu ubetzlusa, the kavana of the heart in tefillah and in Torah, that which is not expressed in words. The katsalka hahiru usal ela, that when that desire goes upwards, mitater ba'man de mitater ve'it asher chulka lahahu barnash ve'it aber mine levushin denuhura le'islabish behind nishmasa lasalka la'ela. All of that desire begins to engarb the neshama so that it could ascend upwards. Va'afal gav de ukma de'ina levushin be'uvdin talyin. And even though we said that the ruach, that is the levush that we're trying to cultivate to bring all separation back to unity, is ultimately composed and comprised of actions. There's also an element of the levush that's dependent upon the ru'usa, the rucha, the desire. Kama, the itmar, lekaima goy melochin ruchin kadishin. How desperately the desire is to rest with those places of holiness. V'da ihu berira demila. This is the clarification of all things. Ubutzina kadisha ulif hachimi Eliyahu. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai learned the secret of the levushim that come about by desire from Eliyahu Hanavi. Levushin de latata beginsa de arab uvdin levushin de laela bereusa the kavana de rucha de liba. That the light of the soul down here comes about by way of action. The light of the soul above, the lights of Shabbos, the levush of Shabbos, comes about through the reusa, the kavana de rucha de liba. V'nahar yoitzim eden lahashkes sagan, and bina descends from chachma in order to irrigate the field, the body. V'ha'ukma of abahai ginsa de latata nahar yoitzim eden vadai. There's truly an expression of bina within chachma. V'tzarich leminda haynahar denafik begins to the latata ba'an eser ikra v'sharash delay. From whence does the light emerge down here in Malchus? Ba'an eser be'eden it comes from chachma, the raza ilah, the ascendant secret of chachma. Ihu v'lo yisyahi v'rishu l'shalta be'ena de saklunusa. And we don't have the ability to grasp the shorish of chachma pnimius atik with our minds. V'raza demila el male eser da et masel atata le'eskalia. If this light was revealed down below, eser de eden ilah kadisha et maser ifachi leminda ela begin the tmira the yikra the eden ilah kadisha et mate ve'isganis eden tata dahu nargid nagid v'nafak mine. All we can understand is the lower level of Malchus, the Eden Tata, because the higher level of Chachma is concealed from it. But what we have to fundamentally understand is that the Levush comes about from our desire to ascend all of the concealment back up in the place of revelation. Chachma remains concealed. It's Adayin lo neskala b'madahai nahar isparish v'nafik migan Eden la'ashka l'ginsa. We can't know how it happens. D'la'ela hachinami migoy hahu pitcha da'amsiusa d'ginsa nafik chad nuhura v'isparich. This is the secret of the Nakuda Tata, which goes all the way up to the Nakuda Ilah, the Ayin Le'Ra'asa Elokim Zulasecha, the secret of the Hisbia B'tzachsecha Es Nafshecha, of the Sveikos Ta'atik, of what Rabbi Nachman describes, of the Shabbos is the Tachlis of Bria, and the Tachlis of Bria is Tachlis Hayediyah Shalei Neda, where we elevate all concealment back up to the place of unknowable unity, only to reveal how the levels of unity are unfathomable. And Be'ezras Hashem, I apologize if this was a little bit more meandering today. Tried to give this year like 4 times with the internet down, so this has been a lot of thought on it. But Be'ezras Hashem, light of the Zohar HaKadosh should illuminate us, and we should be zeicha to enter into Shabbos Be'ezras Hashem.